Okay, YouTube, pop quiz time. What are the first two words and the last two words of the Red Dead Redemption 2 story? What if I told you that forming a complete sentence with those four words might change how you think about Abigail Marston's character? It did for me, even making me wonder, is there a case to be made that Abigail betrayed the Vandal gang? Here are the words that bookend the Red Dead Redemption 2 story.
Abigail says it's home.
Let's talk about it.
Miss Marston to you.
What's good, everybody? And welcome to a sort of trial for Abigail Marston. The way this works is I'll present some evidence, and you, the viewer, will get to tell me if you think Abigail is guilty of betraying the Vandal gang. Before I go any further, I should say that a full spoiler warning is in effect for the events of the RDR2 story. And with that out of the way, let's start by establishing a motive. Abigail has something that no other character in the gang has. She's got blood relatives within their ranks. Despite the sometimes strained relationship with John Marston, her husband,
what choice did I have?
Plenty, you moron.
She demonstrates that she does care for him at multiple points during the game. Early on, we see her contacting Arthur and saying, "Hey, can you go find my husband? He's lost in the snow. I'm worried about him." And then a little bit later on, when he's in prison, she again enlists the help of Arthur and Sadie to go rescue John from that prison and get him back safely. And then in the epilogue, we see that she ultimately returns to John even after John disappoints her multiple times. And of course, there's also Abigail's son, Jack. Her love for Jack is most evident when he gets kidnapped by the Braithwaites at the end of Chapter 3. We can see she's visibly upset, and upon Jack's safe return, she's obviously very happy about that. So it's obvious she loves her son, she loves her family, and her desire to keep them safe is motivation enough for her to go against Dutch and some of his plans. Next up, let's talk about some evidence that suggests Abigail may have snitched on the gang members during the events of the game. Point number one, there is a history here of Abigail not seeing eye to eye with the gang's leader, as Dutch explains to Arthur during the Chapter 4 mission titled Country Pursuits.
You are talking like John. I swear that woman is poisoning him against me. I've seen it before.
Even if we don't know all the details on this one, I think it paints a picture that there's a pattern of Abigail not always seeing eye to eye with Dutch. If there's a pattern, maybe that pattern persists right through the events of RDR2. The second piece of evidence I'd like to talk about is what happened during the Saint Denis bank robbery. And this is a big one, so hold on. As you may recall, during the Chapter 4 mission titled Banking, the Old American Art, Hosea and Abigail are sent ahead to create a distraction for the Saint Denis Police Department while the rest of the gang goes in to rob the bank behind their back. Something, we don't exactly know what, goes horribly wrong. Hosea and Abigail get captured, but yet Hosea is the only one we see outside of the bank. Where's Abigail? We have no idea. And this got me thinking, maybe the answer to where Abigail is hidden in the question of, why did the Pinkertons kill Hosea? Think about it. Hosea is not a threat to them as a gunfighter. If anything, he could be left alive and used as a bargaining chip to get Dutch to do whatever you want him to do. Hosea is Dutch's right-hand man, his ride or die. He's been with Dutch for years. What if Hosea was killed to silence the witness? The one person from the Vandal gang who witnessed Abigail's escape. What if Abigail made a deal with the Pinkertons in that moment, that in exchange for her release, she would act as an informant from inside the gang? Obviously, this wouldn't work if Hosea was left alive to tell Dutch and the rest of the gang what was up, so Milton had to kill him to keep him from talking. Now, some people might ask, if Abigail made a deal with the Pinkertons, why was John captured during the bank shootout instead of, say, released or let to go free with the rest of the gang? So I thought about this, and where I landed was, John getting captured was never part of Abigail's plan. If you think about it, that's way too risky of a plan to suggest, to tell the Pinkertons, all right, go have your big shootout, but there's this one guy you're not supposed to shoot or injure in any way. Take him captive instead. That doesn't even make sense, because in the Chapter 3 mission titled The Battle of Shady Bell, we see that Milton didn't even know who John was at that point.
Who are you? Rip Van Winkle.
Huh. Good day, sir.
So it's entirely believable to me that the rest of the Pinkertons may not have known what John looked like either during that bank shootout, so how would they know not to hurt him? I think the more likely scenario is Abigail had hoped that bank robbery had been a success and that John and everybody else was completely out of the picture by the time Milton and the rest of the Pinkertons got to the bank. And this point of view would also be supported later in the story, where we see Abigail is visibly concerned over John's safety while he's in prison. Next thing I'd like to touch on are some counterpoints to arguments that I would think people would bring up against this whole Abigail is a rat theory. First of all, we've got Abigail's role during the attack at the Linde camp in Chapter 5. The mission is titled Fleeting Joy, and you may remember this is the one where the Pinkertons lead this night raid against the Vanderlyn camp in the swamp, and Abigail is present when the Pinkertons open fire. However, I thought about this, and this could easily be a mistake on the Pinkertons' part. Bill Williamson, by his own admission when he finds the rest of the gang at Linde, says,
"Well, I asked everyone I could find, and eventually someone new said you fools were out here."
If the Pinkertons picked up on that, maybe they assumed that it was only Bill and the gang members that had been on the island of Guarma who were actually hiding out at Linde. So he would be the reason then that Agent Milton and the Pinkertons found the gang. And since they didn't think anything of it, they opened fire on everybody that was there. I would also point out that Micah, whom Agent Milton identified as a rat in Chapter 6, was also present during the attack at Linde. So I say that to say that Abigail's presence at this attack does not necessarily prove that she's innocent. And the second counterpoint that I think is worth mentioning is about Abigail's kidnapping at the end of Chapter 6. So you remember in the mission titled Red Dead Redemption, Abigail is taken from the gang's camp at Beaver Hollow. By this point in the story, when I thought about it, I would suggest that the gang's activities earlier in Chapter 6, such as killing Leviticus Cornwall, who hired the Pinkertons, had made the Pinkertons even more desperate than ever to capture Dutch Vanderlyn and the rest of his associates. And this desperation could have led them to back out of their deal with Abigail and take her as bait to draw the rest of the gang into a trap in Van Horn. Something I thought was interesting when Arthur opens the door, if you look, you can see that Abigail is not gagged in this scene, almost as if the Pinkertons were still maybe trying to get information out of her right up until the end. You would think, if Abigail is a kidnapping victim here, you would want to shut her mouth so she can't say anything to any of the gang members that are coming to save her, to give them any information at all that might give them an edge over the Pinkertons. But that's not the case. Whether she told them anything in this moment or not, we'll never know. I lean towards saying no, she didn't, because she focuses all of her attention on freeing herself so she can get this iconic kill shot on Agent Milton right as he's about to kill Arthur.
Horrible man.
The second thing that's worth mentioning during the scene is that Milton identifies Micah as the rat. Why would he do this if Abigail was also a rat? A couple of reasons, I think, for that. One would be Micah was a rat. I'm not suggesting otherwise. I think there were multiple rats in the Vanderlyn gang over the course of the story. The other would be that of the two characters, Arthur and Sadie would have been more likely to believe that Micah was the rat, and thus spread that dissension among the gang and get them to implode from the inside, which, by the way, is what happened a few moments later after this rescue was successful. The final point I'd like to make loops back around to what I was first talking about at the beginning of the video, and it does involve reading between the lines and connecting some dots that may or may not have been intended by the writers, but I think it's an interesting theory nonetheless. And it builds off of a fan theory posted by Reddit user Evergreen Realms. The theory suggests that Dan Houser, who was one of the primary writers of the RDR2 story, as well as a co-founder of Rockstar Games, used the RDR2 story as a sort of metaphor for how he saw Rockstar trending as a company. The Reddit post points out that Strauss Zelnick is the CEO of Take-Two Interactive, as I think a lot of people in this community probably already know, but he shares a name with a member of the gang, which is Leopold Strauss, the person that loans out money. He's the loan shark. And he makes the point of saying that, Strauss is sort of responsible for Arthur's death since he sends him to collect money from a guy with tuberculosis, and that's ultimately how Arthur catches it. Is it possible that Dan Houser saw Strauss Zelnick as the cause of the slow death of Rockstar Games? This is a company that used to publish a game every few years, and their fans love them for it. But lately, they've been milking a decade-old game, which shall not be named, and they completely abandoned Red Dead Online in favor of it. And the Reddit poster also suggests that Dan saw himself as this creative figure in a company culture that increasingly only cared about money, a sort of outlaw or ghost, if you will, in a world that didn't value his talents anymore. As Arthur Morgan put it,
We're thieves in a world that don't want us no more. You and me, we're more ghosts than people.
all that is to say, if that level of subtlety was present when writing the RDR2 story, I would not be surprised in the least if the first two words and the last two words of the story were put there very intentionally. Red Dead Redemption 2 is the story of John Marston trying to find a life outside of the gang, as he's navigating a gang that is breaking apart from the inside. And that's not to detract from Arthur's part of the story, because Arthur is arguably a better protagonist than even John was in RDR1. But the Red Dead series as a whole is John's. And behind John, there's Abigail, quietly fighting for this idealistic life that she has for herself and her family, where she could raise them in a sort of normal, safe environment. As Abigail says, a home. Okay, YouTube, your turn. What do you think? Was Abigail a rat? Did I miss any points you thought of that would either support or contradict my argument? I'm open to hearing your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching, and until next time, make it count.